Governance and Resource Committee on the 22nd of the 2nd, 2026. If I could ask all members to switch their phones to stun, if I may please, for some good order. And first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Jeff Bond and Councillor Edwards Walker, with Councillor G attending as substitute.
Thank you very much. And on to item number 2, the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. I did just want to pull up those 3 actions that we picked up from Councillor Bates, Councillor Bull and Councillor Ripton. They were on me, so were you happy with the responses that you got or have followed up with? Okay, brilliant, thank you. Do I have anyone supporting that motion? Thank you, Councillor Ripton. Any seconders? Thank you, Councillor Bates. And all those for, please. All those against? And any abstentions? Thank you very much. On to item number 3. We've got no public participation, no interests. Of course, there's interests. On to item number 6, asset management plan, please. Mike, if you could take us away on this.
Thank you, Chair. So this is another phase of the asset management plan land holdings review reports. We're at phase 11 now. And this concerns 3 sites, and by agreement with the Chair, I'll discuss each site in separately to enable questions after each one. The first site is quite unusually an acquisition or land coming to the authority from another party, from Miller Homes, and the details of which are set out particularly in the appendix of the report for site number 1. I think the point I would just want to make with this is very much the exception rather than the rule, because this is a site the transfer of which was agreed back in 2016, and it has taken some time for various reasons to get to this stage. But the particular point to make is that there is, although taking on the site allows access to a considerable amount of over £25,000 worth of Section 106 monies, that money is for upgrading the play area on the site, not for general site maintenance. And I think if we were taking this site on afresh now, or looking at this now, we would want a commuted sum to cover that maintenance. But as this is a pre-existing agreement or a historical agreement from 2016, we are recommending that we proceed with it at this stage. As it says in the appendix, there was some drainage works that that Miller Homes needed to do before the site, before we could take the site on. Those works were done last summer, so we're now proposing that we take on the site, the details of which are set out in the appendix of the report. So I'm happy to take any questions on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And yes, just to reiterate that Mike pointed out that we're going to do all 3 of these items separately so we can have questions around them. So we'll clearly vote on each of them individually, so we can have a good conversation around them. So any questions on item 1, please? No? In which case, do I have any supporters? Councillor Bates, thank you very much.
To propose we take on the ground. It is required. This has got play area on there. We've got now a large housing development, and I fully support this.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Do I have a seconder at all? Thank you, Councillor Bull. Did you want to speak on it at all? Councillor Hughes. Do I have anyone? Do anyone want any further debate that wanted on this? I don't think there will be. No, thank you. Could I have all those voted for then, please? All those against? And all those abstentions? Thank you very much. Have we got that? Thank you. On to item number 2, please then, Mike. Land Ashbourne Recreation Ground. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, again, this is a fairly self-explanatory report. This concerns this sports screen scoreboard at Ashbourne Recreation Ground. As it says in the report, since the report was drafted, in fact, the screen is now there and operational. It was erected under a licence for works, and it's underpinned by a tenancy at will at the moment, but the proposal here is to grant a longer lease, and that lease to the Ashbourne Sports Community Partnership will be in line with their existing lease of the Ashbourne Pavilion nearby, which is powered from, and they will have all of the maintenance responsibility for this and be responsible for operating it. As I say, the screen is now there on site, and the recommendation is to grant this long lease. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Do I have any questions from the floor at all? In which case, do I have any supporters? Councillor Bates?
I fully support this, Chair. I back everything that the sports group are trying to achieve. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, they do excellent work. Do I have a seconder at all? Councillor Flisser, thank you very much. In which case, can I put it all to the vote then, please? All those for? Thank you very much. I believe Councillor Hughes, you can join again in item 7. Just to be clear. Thank you very much. Cheers. For your late arrival. On to item number 3 then, please, Mike, which is land at Wash Green, Wirksworth.
Thank you, Chair. So this is concerning the proposed disposal of one of the last parcels of land that we retained from the 2002 housing stock transfer in this part of Wirksworth. And I think it's useful to note that of the land that we did retain, part of that has already gone for affordable housing use. The second part of that has gone to being transferred to Wirksworth Town Council as a community play area, which is operated by them. And there's a third area that we're retaining, which is shaded yellow on the plan. And that site, housing colleagues are currently looking at a potential affordable housing development scheme on that in conjunction with Platform Housing, who own some of the adjacent land. So that, in effect, we have, I suppose, exhausted the potential for the bit of land or the areas of land that we retained from the stock transfer. Certainly, we've exhausted the affordable housing potential of that land, and we're left with this area of woodland. It is quite mature woodland. A number of the trees on that are protected by TPOs. It's in the conservation area. It's outside the settlement framework boundary for development. So redevelopment of that site for anything else would be protected in effect by the planning system, plus this tree preservation orders on some of the more mature trees on the site. The site does have some biodiversity potential or value, which obviously we would like to see preserved, but that is, as I said, protected by the planning system and by the tree preservation orders on the site. So we're proposing that we dispose of this land by auction. Other reason for disposing of it is potentially maintenance liability with ash dieback, etc. Could be a considerable cost. We've already had some cost on this site as a result of ash dieback trees. There is a good market for small areas of woodland, and that would enable somebody else to take that on and manage it, but also have the maintenance liability, and we would obviously get a capital receipt. In terms of the consultation, we've not had, because of the timing of this committee, Wirksworth Town Council have not been able to consider it at a town council meeting, but they have individually asked their councillors, one of whom has asked whether we should consider putting a restrictive covenant on the site to further protect it. I mean, our view on that is that that's not really necessary, given that, as I've said, tree preservation order is in the conservation area, etc. But also the legal advice that we've had is that as we won't retain any ownership of any land in the area, I mean, we're retaining this small site whilst housing look into it, but eventually that will go for affordable housing. So in the medium term, we won't have any landholdings adjacent, so it'll be difficult to prove that we have the benefit of any covenant as the district council. We wouldn't recommend putting a covenant on it, but that question has been asked. Other than that, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Hughes first.
Yes, Chair. I think, Mike, you've answered the question that I was going to ask, which was, couldn't we put a covenant on this? Because I mean, while it may be protected by the planning system at the moment, in the future, we don't know what would happen, and we don't know what changes there will be. Whereas a covenant would give us long-term protection for this site, and can't a covenant work for the people of Derbyshire Dales rather than just for the parish, for the district council?
If I may, Chair, could Christy answer that point, because it's more of a legal question, I think. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Covenants are quite tricky as to how you enforce them in the future. So to have a covenant like this, it would have to be a restrictive covenant that they're not allowed to do a certain thing. And to benefit from a restrictive covenant, the beneficiary must have land in the area. Now, there is a slight exception where we can rely upon one under the government, but it can still be quite tricky to enforce. So yes, there is a possibility. There's other ways of trying to protect as well, with positive covenants, when you have a relationship with the buyer, and then every successive buyer has to enter into a promise as well. So it is possible. It's just complicated.
So it would be possible to put a positive covenant to protect and maintain this as woodland, as in a deciduous woodland, in accordance with long-term use in that realm.
Yeah, a positive covenant will be allowed, provided they're incurring expenditure. It's something they have to do. A restrictive covenant is something they're not allowed to do. Mm-hmm. So there are possibilities, but yes, enforceability may be difficult in the future, but you can try to put one on.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ripton next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mike. Could you maybe give an outline of who you think might be interested in, what type of buyer might be interested in this land? Because I think what you're saying is a huge amount of commercial value, and I'm sensing a desire to protect this for biodiversity. So I'm interested who the buyer might be, and whether the council might consider either gifting that land to groups or a group that had similarly aligned interests to us, rather than seeking a commercial buyer, perhaps.
Yeah, so I mean, there is a demand for small areas of woodland, and they are some of the local agents, such as Bagshaw's normally have a number on their books at any time, going through various auctions. So a lot of the demand is from people that just want to own woodland and look after it as woodland, rather than any sort of commercial reasons. I mean, it does have a value because there is a demand for it. I suppose the more restrictions you put on, that may have a slight effect on the value, but it's more, I suppose, the amount of work that is required, legal work, etc., in order to put these restrictions on it. So I don't think it's a question of making it unsaleable by putting restrictions on it. You know, we could do that. But I think there are other groups and individuals that are, I suppose, better set up to manage woodland than we are, with the resources that we have at our disposal and the other priorities that we have. The other potential purchaser, of course, is the neighbouring landowners, who may also be interested in adding that to their existing land holdings.
Thank you very much. Councillor G.
Yes, that's my question has sort of been covered in that, because from the way you described this plot of land, I was slightly bamboozled as to who you're expecting who'd want to buy it, because you expecting somebody who'd want to take on a liability and protect woodland that we can't be bothered to protect. I mean, are you expecting some sort of angel to come along and buy it? And have you got any idea of the value of this land? Because it seems to me that there could be a worry that it could go into unscrupulous hands and it might end up being ravaged and turned into something that we didn't expect. You know, there could be some unintended consequences, and I'm not sure what type of amount of money you're expecting to sell it for. I mean, what would the sales particulars be? Woodland that the council can't be bothered to look after. You can't build on it. You know, what is it? Somebody who just wants to walk around in the woods?
Yeah, thank you. So, obviously, I wouldn't say that we can't be bothered to look after it. What I'm doing is presenting something in line with the existing asset management plan, and the next item is the new asset management plan, but where it does recommend that unused or surplus land and buildings be reviewed to establish whether they should be sold or whether they could contribute to the council's key objectives. So, I mean, it's in members' gift to decide what to do with the land. I'm purely bringing it forward because we retain the land in this area primarily for affordable housing development. We're keeping a bit back, as I've said in the report. Some has already gone for affordable housing development. This piece does not have affordable housing development. That's not to say it doesn't have biodiversity value, but you know, I suppose we've got to look at what the council is set up to do with our land holdings in support of the council's aims and objectives. So it would be very nice if we could have a woodland team that went and looked after all of our woodland and etc. But we have got you know, a small, very small tree team, a lot of trees right across the district that we have to look after. So we're not saying we can't be bothered to look after it. It's just that others might be better placed to do that. There is a demand for woodland. It is quite popular, and as I've said, if you look at on the website for someone like Bagshaw's, they normally have 3 or 4 parcels of woodland on at any one time for sale. People buy it for amenity use, for I suppose conservation and biodiversity use. So there is a demand for it. In terms of value, that's something we would look at with the auctioneers when we got to that stage, and they would advise. So it does have a value, but it's not going to solve anyone's financial problems, but it does have a value. Yeah, I think that's the position. But whether we sell it or not, that's why I'm bringing it to members. It's a member decision really as to whether we do proceed.
Thank you, Councillor. Were you coming back?
Yeah. Just have a follow-up on that. Haven't we got any idea at all in terms of the aspiration of the value? I mean, can you put any figure on it at all?
Well, I wouldn't want to put a figure on it in a public session, because if it goes on the market for auction, we're almost setting the guide and the reserve price before we've even started. So we do need to the guide price, if it goes to auction, that we set would be set in conjunction with, in consultation with a chartered surveyor and valuer who would know the values for such land. So we have a duty to get the best value for land that we sell, and we would proceed such that that duty was met. But I wouldn't want to put a value on it now. All I would say is it's not, you know, we're not talking a massive value for woodland, but you can see by looking on auctioneers' websites that woodland does sell for a reasonable sum. The reason we're selling it here, I think, is or proposing to sell it is not necessarily just to bring in a capital receipt. It is to because it is in effect a maintenance liability for this council. We feel it's protected, and there is a demand for it. But you know, we don't have to sell it. That's why I'm bringing it. It's a recommendation, and it's for members to decide at the end of the day.
Thank you, Mike. Sorry, had you come back? You only get one come back.
Could I have one more?
No. If you want to go again, you can go to the end of the list if you want to. Councillor Shelley, you're next. Do you want to go by the end of the list?
Thank you. Yeah. This is quite an important and sensitive site. Actually, I know it on the edge of Wirksworth, and you think of the amenity of the residents who live in the road that's sort of around the back of that as well. But I must confess, even though I know the site, I'm slightly confused about exactly what is already happening to parts of it. Just looking at your report here, page 24, and trying to work my head around the plan that's at the top there. And that's quite important that we understand this. So am I right in thinking that a part of the site within the red boundary has already been allocated for, is it up to 4 housing units, or is that outside the red boundary?
The boundary that we're recommending selling is the red boundary less the yellow area.
Okay.
And the yellow area, colleagues in our housing department are working on a potential development of that now, in conjunction with, you can just see on the plan, there's a small garage site adjacent to that, and that's in the ownership of Platform Housing. So they're looking at a potential development on that garage site and yellow land. That's being looked at the moment by our housing team. Other parts of the site that we retain that aren't on this plan have already gone in previous years. So what I'm saying is we've retained quite a large parcel of land. Part of it is to the other side of King Edward Street, and that's already been developed as part of a larger affordable housing scheme, I think about 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. The playground was done about 8 years ago, which is the bit next to the yellow land, the other side of the garage site. We're looking at the yellow land now, so we're not proposing to sell that. We're just proposing to dispose of the remaining land that we have left.
Okay, I'm still confused. Sorry. So the yellow land is being appraised for further affordable housing, but there's a section immediately adjacent to this site in red that's already been allocated for 4 affordable housing units, or is that within the red bit? Because I'm struggling to find any other. Our red bit goes right up to the back of the existing housing on King Edward Street and right up to the road edge. Can you confirm that?
Yeah. Okay. So looking at the plan on page 22, the top plan, I suppose it's like a T shape in effect, isn't it? So the base of the T and the right-hand top of the T, which is the bit that's in red but unshaded, is the area we're proposing to offer for sale. The yellow shaded area is the area we're proposing to retain at the moment, pending this potential housing scheme.
Okay, but can you identify, just for clarity for our sake, where the site is for the 4 affordable housing units that have already been considered?
That's in the yellow area and the garage site adjacent to it, which is not in our ownership. So the red boundary on this plan, the overall red boundary is everything we own in that area.
Yeah.
That is Derbyshire Dales landholding. Our housing colleagues are looking at a development using some of our land and using some of Platform's land. And that's the 4 dwellings that's being looked at the moment. So that may come forward. If that comes forward, then another report will come at that time. But the land that the unshaded area is the remainder of our landholding, which we have no operational use for, and that's why we're recommending disposing of that.
Okay, but part of that is also being considered for housing?
No,
Right,
None
so
of
it's
that.
purely within the yellow bit then?
purely the yellow.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Ripton, Dorrit, then I've got Councillor Bottle, then I've got Councillor Hughes. Yeah, Dorrit, this way.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I understand your point about not having the skills or the desire to maintain this. I agree with that. I guess I'm wondering how we might use the process of disposal to maybe get a better outcome. So if we go straight to auction, effectively we're just finding the price and exchanging that for a capital sum, versus, you know, if we were to invite maybe community groups to express an interest before it goes to commercial sale, it might allow communities to either tell us what they would like to do with it or have a stake in that, which might elongate the process. But then equally, I mean, there are several assets that are of interest to communities that have come up in my ward where people invariably fail to acquire them because they're always on the back foot, they don't get the opportunity. So I wonder whether we might use a different process that might result in an auction if we can't be successful, but at least give communities the chance to work with us to perhaps find a solution that protects this piece of land for its biodiversity value.
Yeah, I think potentially you could do something like that. I suppose the issue is the resources that will take to do that and where those resources are, because that's something that climate change and biodiversity colleagues may wish to have involvement in, but obviously they've got their own priorities and workload to do. So, you know, that would be a significant amount of work, I would suggest, but I understand what you're saying. All I would say is that we do get from time to time approaches from community groups and others for areas of land. To my knowledge, we've not had any from community groups. We've had others from other landowners, but not from community groups for this particular site. But that's not to say that there wouldn't be interest if it was advertised.
Thank you. And I think you did also mention earlier on that it had been consulted amongst the members of Wirksworth Town Council as well, so it has been sort of consulted a little bit. I imagine that would have some feedback. Is that correct, Mike? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Buttle, you're next, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilton. I know I'm a massive romantic, but you know, I would absolutely love to have been brought up in a council house with some woodlands adjacent, and I see no particular reason why we need to be flogging this off right now without the opportunity to explore what we can do for the community of small children in the future. I think that, you know, like they need somewhere to swing, they need somewhere to hang out, somewhere to build tree houses. And I'm kind of a bit against flogging this off. I'd like to try and work out some other way to involve it with our housing team so they can, you know, like make something of it that's just more than some council just getting rid of something because it's inconvenient.
Sorry, just to ask you, is it a question?
Okay. I have no question. I'm sorry. I'll come back later.
Thank you, Councillor Bottle. Councillor Hughes, you're next. Could you press your button, please, David? If that's David, just press your button. Thank you.
Turning to page 33 of our programme tonight, delivering our strategic priorities under the new asset management, which I really like. I think it's brilliant, and the way you've tied it into the corporate plan and everything else, and our vision and objectives It's absolutely brilliant. I was really enthusiastic about it. The first point there is a thriving environment in Derbyshire Dales. The third one is prosperous and sustainable Dales communities and businesses. And the fourth is resources and services for to enable communities to flourish. And Mike, wouldn't it be right to say that what we're doing is privatising the benefit of an open public space with excellent woodland, so that the community can no longer use it because it will be behind barbed wire or something like that. Whereas as we own it, we can make it into a park or an open space with access, and we can make it into a positive benefit for the people who live in the platform housing around it. And like Neil Buttle, I did grow up in an area where there were trees nearby, and we did go out and build tree houses and make forts in the trees and so on. And I can testify to the benefit, the ability for children to become independent in doing things. And Hurst Farm, of course, has got woodland around that, and there's a thriving...
David, you got a question?
Yeah, okay. Well, so I had there were questions in that about.
Thank you, David. Mike, please. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, so I think I suppose there are some valid points there. I'm merely bringing this to members because it's in accordance with the asset management plan, and there's a number of sites that we've brought to this committee in previous meetings of this committee, and some of the members have had other views. We're not saying we must sell it, and otherwise there's a problem. The point I would make is it's not quite public open space, and if it was public open space, then there's a sort of I suppose a higher standard of maintenance. The risk element becomes higher. So when we're looking at all of our woodland across the district with ash dieback, etc., that is a considerable expense, of nearly £100,000 a year just for ash dieback. So this particular block of woodland by itself isn't going to break the bank, but there are considerations when you open an area of woodland to public use. That's not to say that use isn't valuable or to take away from it. I don't think anybody would like to see this woodland disappear, and that's why we've said that there are protections on it and tree preservation orders, etc. But I'll come back to the point that it is really a member decision as to whether we dispose of this or not. But I think if we don't dispose of it, I think I suppose enhance the usability of it or open it to public use. I think there's a lot of work involved in that, as mentioned Hurst Farm, the group that dealt with the woodland trails around Hurst Farm. I'm sure you're aware of the considerable amount of work that's gone into doing that, which includes work around risk with trees, etc. So it's a member decision whether to sell it or not, but if we don't sell it, I think to suddenly invite public onto it, not because we want to keep people off it, but it's purely a safety issue with trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor. Sorry, Mr. Wills.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think just one additional point I would make to what's been said, really. Clearly, members do have a choice here, as you always do, and many of the initiatives that you've spoken about are quite laudable. The only point I would add is that the Council also has a very ambitious capital programme, and you have a very ambitious corporate plan. That capital programme is financed by investment which is derived from the disposal of non-operational assets. So it's disposals like this which do actually go into the coffers of the capital programme to allow you to do other things in that programme. Now, that's not to say that you have to dispose of this, but it is a valid point because there are very few sources of income which go into that capital programme to finance other initiatives the council wants to pursue. So I think it's just important to bear that in mind alongside the other considerations that you've already discussed.
Thank you very much, Paul. Councillor Hughes, do you have any comeback on that at all?
Yes, I was wondering whether Mike had any contact with Matlock Town Council, who manage the what's it called, the meadows above the football ground, using groundworks and volunteers, and it costs tens of thousands of pounds a year to manage those woodlands. I was wondering whether you'd had any contact with them to see if there are other ways we could manage such parcels of woodland.
I haven't at this stage. Now I've consulted with our tree officers and with our climate change and biodiversity manager, but not with any specific groups on this site.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Flitter next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, Paul's mentioned something I was going to say, and that's that we do have an ambitious programme that we want to get through, and this type of thing is apt for that. But the question that I want to just ask is the thought that, does this piece of land qualify as, I think it's in the next item, that we've got £432,000 of surplus assets? Is this part of that? And if it is, are the rules of disposing or what we can do with the land any different than community asset transfer? Because, as I say, there's from that, I would have thought that if it is part of that surplus asset total, then I would have thought we'd have had a basic idea on how much this is worth to the council and what we're trying to get done in the bigger picture.
Yeah, so the surplus assets, that's linked to our asset valuations that form part of the council's accounts, and there's a definition of surplus assets, and the figure that's in the next report links back to our asset valuations. It doesn't, I suppose it's a financial definition more than anything else. If it's a property that is not key, or land that is not key to the council's main aims and objectives or services, such as this building or the depot, or then that can be classed under the SIPFA protocols for asset valuations as surplus, and that's where that figure comes from. Yeah, that this would be classed as surplus at the moment, but that is purely I suppose, a financial category rather than putting any restrictions on what we can or can't do with the site.
Does that answer it, Councillor?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. It's Councillor Shelley, then it's you next, Councillor G. Thank you.
Thank you, yes. This sort of follows on from my previous question, and I need to actually declare an interest here because I'm a member of the Wirksworth Community Land Trust. So the reason for my interest really is I don't think we've got the degree of detail here in terms of things like tree preservation orders. If the potential housing use on this land, which is another one of our council's priorities in terms of social and affordable housing, is restricted to the yellow part at the moment, has there been any consideration to extending that along the road frontage on part of this site? And I say that because the site is actually, it's split into really two parts. The hammerhead of the T is relatively flat land, which contains trees, yes, but I don't know whether they're TPO trees particularly. The bit underneath the wavy line there, that's a stream, and the land starts to slope up really quite steeply there and will be very, very difficult to develop. That would be an area which, I mean, personally, I would always support as a green break, as a protection for trees. But not knowing where the TPOs are, I think is quite significant here. So it's just a hint there that there might be some more value to our community, because I also know that Wirksworth in particular has a desperate lack of social housing. Other areas of Derbyshire Dales.
Is this turning into a question?
I will just conclude. All I'm saying is that it's really, really important for Wirksworth compared to some other places, such as Darley Dale, which have got a large number of sites which are being looked at for social housing at the moment. So it's that consideration about where the trees are that are protected and whether there is any thought about potential further housing on this site, which could be very useful.
Yeah, well, I understand our housing team have been working on options for this site for a number of years, and they know the detail of that, so they will have looked at wide areas, and as you say, the site is in effect in two parts, divided by the stream. So if there was any potential for developing anything further up, further out than the yellow area, then they would have looked at that. They've been looking at this off and on for 4 or 5 years, and they're looking at a particular scheme now. So I'm advised by them that that is the boundary that that is potentially developable for affordable housing. So that's the basis on which I've drafted this report. But I don't have the detail of all of the research that they've done to get to that point, but they have done that research.
Thank you. Councillor G.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right time, but I'd like to propose an amendment to this, the recommendations, that we don't sell this plot of land and we keep it in the council's ownership for the future benefit of the community, because I can't see a convincing argument that this land is going to add any real value.
I think that would be a
plan.
Just to interrupt, that wouldn't be a for. That was just for and against. It's an amendment that would go against the entire thing, so we'd just be voting for it, for or against.
Yeah, all
correct
right.
me if I'm wrong.
Well, so if we vote against it,
then
we can go down.
We can
that
replan
pathway.
something down the line if that's what
right.
members fit.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any proposers then? Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder at all? Well, I suppose either way you're going to... Thank you, Councillor Buttle. Yeah. Seconder. Right, all those for this one, could you please put your hands up? One. For supporting the sale of this land. All those against, please. And all abstentions. Have you got that? Yeah, thank you very much. So that's confirmed. That's being retained for the time being. Councillor Ripton.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask, and to help Mike, what is the next action? Because I think what I am hearing is that disposal may ultimately be the right thing, but there are questions we want to ask or processes that we would like the council to go through first. So Mike, to help steer Mike, what direction can we give him?
Mike, what's the best way, or any officers at all, just on and how we guide you from here?
I don't think that's a very good interpretation of what's just happened, because we're not hearing here that proposal is the right thing, so we've just voted that proposal is the wrong thing. And we all listened to the debate and we listened to the instructions.
So we voted against it,
yeah.
But I think it's from where does it go from here back into the cycle of basically where does it go next? Does it add value to the... Sorry. So if that makes sense, it goes back to the group. Sorry, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I think the answer is it goes back into the pool, and we have to think of another use of the land or use of the land, or if we want to continue to want to sell it in a way that meets the council's requirements. So I think we'd need to have, if it does go back for sale, we would have to try out different options for conditions associated with that sale in this group or in council, and as an alternative, the officers might consider other uses. For example, creating an open space or an arboretum or something like that, in which people could walk around. That would be another use of the land, but I don't think this is the forum for deciding that. I think that's something that would need to
Agreed. I think Mike will have to come back with another paper, basically, in whatever form that takes. If we've pushed back on it, would that be correct, Mike?
Yeah. So I suppose this paper is looking at a recommendation to dispose of it in accordance with the sort of existing asset management plan. So I've said that's members' decision, and I've heard the opinions tonight, and that's absolutely fine. If we don't dispose of the land, we will retain it as part of our land holdings. We have other areas of woodland. Our tree and landscape team will be looking at how we manage that, as they already are, and our biodiversity colleagues will look at also feeding into that process of how we manage the woodland that we have. So it'll simply stay as a district council landholding piece of woodland that we own, alongside other areas of woodland that we own right across the district. So, and it will be managed in that way. So I don't think anything particularly different will happen. It'll just be part of, considered alongside all the other land holdings. And I wouldn't be proposing to bring it back in a short time scale, recommending to sell it, because I've heard the views this evening. So, and that was the reason for bringing it. So,
thank you, Mike. It's a good point. Councillor Butcher, quickly before we move on to the next item.
So I think what's needed here, clearly people are wanting something more than what Mike is describing, but I can see Mike's position is that he's just managing the land. So I think we just need a bit of a discussion, perhaps with leaders and the chief executive, about what the options are and where we might go forward. So it needs to be thinking about the costs of all these things, but also the benefits to the local communities of the different woodlands that we've got, and whether there's something sensible can be done with that within within the resources we have, and then come back again. And it may well, as Simon says, lead to disposal in the end, or it may be that we do get real community benefits from it in some other way.
Well, what I'll do is I'll take away an action then from this to feedback through to leaders to basically push that forward as to what that potentially might be. Okay, does that sound amenable? Sorry, Councillor Ripson, go on. One last one.
Yeah, and I don't think we've got any Wirksworth councillors here, but I mean, clearly engage them and see if they can help convene that process.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right, thank you very much, everybody. On to item number 7, the asset management plan. Again, you, Mike, if you could please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we've already talked a bit about asset management plans this evening. So this paper report concerns the proposed new asset management plan that covers the period 2025 to 2030, replacing the existing asset management plan. The report, or the proposed asset management framework, which is included at Appendix 1, has been drafted with assistance of CIPFA, who are the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, I think, that manage the or deal with the local authority sort of finance process. So they have looked at this. We've engaged them to look at this alongside other asset management plans for other authorities throughout the country, and it's been put together following workshops with all of the various service leads across the council, looking at what is particularly important for their service, and how land and property impacts on that or helps with that. and that is the purpose of the asset management plan. It basically doesn't particularly do anything new. It sets out a framework within which we manage council land and property in support of our corporate aims and objectives, particularly those in the current Derbyshire Dales plan. Some people may think that having a document that goes to 2030 in the light of local government review, current sort of 2028 date, is it sensible to have this, to bring this now? I think the timing of it is purely because of the other existing plan really being out of date. A lot of things have moved on since that time. A lot of legislation has changed, and importance of things like biodiversity and climate change has increased from where it was at the time in 2018 when the previous plan was drafted. But also we consider that having a framework, a clear framework within which we make land and property decisions is to our advantage as an authority now, but it also feeds into the LGR process. And in fact, this week, the first meeting took place of the Estates Programme Board across all the Derbyshire authorities. And within that, the first stage of that is data gathering and looking at all of our plans, what we own, what we lease, what contracts we have in place, what it costs us, and what rationale we use to make land and property decisions. So this document will be really important as part of that. It also ties into other areas that have been mentioned this evening, such as community asset transfers. There is a separate policy on that coming, but this document refers to that also. In terms of what the asset management plan does and how it ties into the Derbyshire Dales plan, if I can just give a couple of brief examples. So looking at the 5 strategic policies, property can either have a direct impact in achieving those priorities, or it can have an indirect impact. And just a few examples of that. One of the priorities is of course housing that meets the needs of Dales residents. So how does property assist in that, or what impact does that have on the council's land and property? Well, we've already touched upon it in the last report. There's a piece of land there, and there's other pieces of land that we're looking at for affordable housing development. And over the time since 2002, when we retained various areas of land across the district from the housing stock transfer, over 100 affordable homes have been developed on those areas of land. So that's a direct use of the council's land and property holdings to assist corporate aims and objectives. There's more, I suppose, back office functions that if you look at the objective of financially sound, fair and responsive district council, within that we need to make sure that we are managing our leases and our property properly. We're getting the proper return where we let property out, and where property is a maintenance liability and has no operational use that we do, bring that forward to members to look at whether we should retain that property or not. So that's a sort of function that also links in. There's obviously in the environmental side of things, there's direct actions we can take towards the net zero target, and we've been doing using government grants, looking at decarbonising some of our land and buildings. So we've had schemes at Ashbourne Leisure Centre, this building, the Town Hall, the Agricultural Business Centre in Bakewell, and our depot, where we've had heat pumps installed, electric heat pumps, air source heat pumps instead of gas heating, and we've had solar PV installed. So again, using our land and buildings and making sure that they fit in with our aims and objectives. There's some more indirect use of land and property. So one of the aims is preventing pollution to watercourses and rivers. There's a scheme potentially coming up in Matlock where an area of land that we own, which is a car park, Severn Trent might be looking at using that to put in a storm water tank, which basically in times of storms retains the water before it is released into the river, and that is going to reduce the instances of pollution. So it's not, it'd be a Severn Trent scheme, they'd be paying for it, but we can utilise some of our land holdings to make that happen. So there's direct and indirect ways in which we can use our land and property to assist the aims and objectives, and to make sure that we have a framework within which we manage things, and we make sure that it is managed properly and efficiently. So that's a bit of background to why the plan is required, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It was an excellent report. Can I open it to floor? Questions, please. From any members? If I don't have any questions, do I have any proposers? Councillor Hughes, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Buttle. And could I have all those voting for this paper, please? Sorry, of course. Sorry, Councillor Hughes. Apologies. Do you wish to speak on it?
Thank you. A general point. First of all, this is about the first report I've ever seen from our council. It may not be the first report, but this is the best example of pulling forward the corporate policy, corporate vision and objectives that and goals that we wrote early on in 2023-24, and incorporating them and driving them down to specific actions in a framework. And I think, Mike, you should be commended for that, because I think it's a case study in how to do it, and I would ask that the local plan subcommittee or committee takes account of this in preparing the local plan, so that the local plan is also lines up with our corporate priorities in the way that this does. So I think thank you for not only providing an excellent report, an excellent framework for asset management. I think you've provided a pro forma for how we should be doing. We should be incorporating our strategic priorities in any area, and I'm going to take it away as a model. So thank you. And there was one point that I was going. Well, there was one point about asset disposal, which I think is relevant here, if I can find it again. And that is, if an asset is to be considered for disposal, then it doesn't suggest whether there are other alternative uses within the council for that land. And I think the one we've just looked at is exactly that, an example of that, where we've got a piece of land which has no economic value to us, and in fact is a cost, and therefore we want to get rid of it. But in fact, it could be repurposed for community use in some way, or to provide a community asset. And I feel that it's important that we acknowledge that in when we're looking at disposing of particular assets. The other one might be, the depot in Ashbourne is being used as a traveller site, temporary traveller site at the moment. If we were considering not having a depot in Ashbourne, then it would have been valuable to consider other uses, one of which could be a traveller site. So I think there's that addition that I think the words can be taken as meaning that, but I just thought I'd bring that up. So, and then finally, the land isn't only for building; it's also for providing for communities, for building communities, and we've got one at the moment in Starkholmes, which is part of Matlock, where we're looking for an asset transfer from the Derbyshire Dales that's been going on for 8 years now. And we've still not made it to the final point where the asset is handed over. But that is an asset of community value. And the purpose of bringing it into Matlock Town Council is to preserve its use in that way. So I think we need to consider land for its community value, building sustainable communities as well as, and that's not only houses, that's making an environment which is fit for all. So thank you. I really like this report. And
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. High praise indeed from Councillor Hughes there, Mike. Did you want to speak on this at all, Councillor Buttle, before I put it to the vote?
Yes, please. I'd just like to say how fantastic it is. And the thought of this being fed into LGR and it being one of the framework documents for the way the new councils start to work is just superb work. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you very much. Can I have all those for the paper then, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much, Mike, for your input. Can I go on to item number 8, proposed external review of internal audit, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's a requirement of the Global Internal Audit Standards there is an external review of internal audit every 5 years, so the auditors are audited, if you like. And the main purpose of that is to provide this committee and officers the assurance that internal audit are operating in accordance with best practice. So our last external review took place in May 2021, so it's due again this May. The standards require that I consult with the committee in advance about the proposed review. So last time Derbyshire Dales joined with the Internal Audit Consortium to have their review at the same time. And I do feel it makes sense to do that again because Derbyshire Dales District Council, we use the same documentation and processes as the Audit Consortium, so there's economies to do in that. I've already undertaken one self-assessment against the global standards, and we did develop an action plan and have been implementing those actions. In January this year, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy did produce a checklist for conformance with the global standards. So what I'm working on at the moment is completing that self-assessment against that checklist. So what I'm proposing is that once I've done that self-assessment again, is that we appoint an external person to come in and do a validation of that self-assessment. I'm proposing that I get quotes for doing that will be based on a specification agreed between myself and the 4 Section 151 officers. The external reviewer would be required to have the relevant internal audit experience and qualification to be able to do that. So when the reviewer comes in, it's likely they'll examine all our documentation and working practices, and there'll probably be some sort of questionnaire to Section 151 officers, chairs of audit committees, to establish how they feel that internal audit performs and works. So the cost of the review, it would be split equally 4 ways between the 4 councils. At the end of the review, the external assessor will provide a report, and I propose I'd bring that full report to this committee so you could see exactly our good points and if there is any learning points. And then following that, we'll develop an action plan to address any recommendations that are made and keep the committee up to date on how we go about implementing those. So there's 4 recommendations for approval, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you for your excellent work. Just in interest of note, Councillor G, you won't be able to vote in this one because you stepped out of the room there, but I think you knew that, right? Thank you. Do I have any questions from the floor at all? Councillor Bull.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just a bit curious that you're asking for somebody to come in. Obviously, we have Mazars, who's our auditors. Don't they oversee what you're doing to do this review?
Mazars are completely separate to us. They do the external audit work for the council, so they don't overview they don't place reliance on our work or review our work at all. And it may be, when we get quotes of the work, it might be an external audit company that might be interested in that, but I think there'd probably be a bit of a conflict of interest if it was Mazars that did it. This should be completely sort of independent.
Okay, thank you.
So Mazars are also part of the finance function as well, whereas obviously Jenny's remit is the more broader audits across everything, if that makes sense. So they're just specific for that, and then also it's kind of audit of the audits over the view to make sure who polices the policeman, so to speak. So yeah, okay, thank you. Any more questions? Do I have any people? Thank you, Councillor Felicity. Do I have a seconder at all, please? Thank you, Councillor Ripton. Could I have all those? Did you wish to speak on it at all? Sorry. Don't want to miss that out. Right, thank you very much. Could I have all those voting for then, please? Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Jenny. On to your next item as well. Item number 9, the Internal Audit Plan, please. 26-27. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to present our draft plan for 26-27 for your approval. It's been prepared taking into account the requirements of the global audit standards and prepared with being able to give me enough information to provide an audit opinion at the end of the year on your governance, risk and control arrangements. So we've tried to cover a range of services with a range of different audits so that I can give that opinion. The draft plan has been discussed and agreed with the Section 151 officer and also the corporate leadership team. We are going to roll forward 2 audits from the 25-26 plan. That's choice-based lettings and grant compliance. So we consider lots of things when we're putting the draft plan together. So we look at the council's objectives and priorities, the level of risk, so the strategic risk register. It comes into account how long it is since we last did the audit, the results of the previous audit, and what's needed for me to be able to provide an opinion. So this draft plan is 377 operational days, and that's based on 2 full-time equivalent audit staff and some of my time. So the draft plan I'm proposing is at Appendix 1, and that also shows you what we covered this financial year and what we may indicatively cover in 27-28, although that would be revisited next year in the light of risks emerging or any changes. And then the last column of Appendix 1 just tries to give you a flavour of what the main risks are. So it is an ambitious plan. It does rely on us being fully staffed. But if there were any major changes to the approved plan during the year, we would bring it back to this committee for approval. So it's recommended that the proposed plan that you've got at Appendix 1 for 26-27 is agreed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions? Sorry, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, two questions. First is about KPIs. Claire Allen produces an excellent paper every quarter or every 6 months on the performance of the council overall. Does that feed into your audit timetable at all in terms of identifying areas that should be audited, or is that an independent exercise?
We haven't looked at the KPI results, no, for producing our audit plan, but we have looked at what's on the strategic risk register. So I guess if the KPIs were indicating that there were problems in certain areas, that would feed into the risk registers, the operational risk registers and the strategic risk registers. So whenever we look at an area, we would pick up on what's included in those risk registers to incorporate it into our testing.
Do you think there's a process there that may be missing? I don't know. I mean, it's up to you to...
It may be something we could look at in future to see if there's anything we can learn from that.
Whether the KPIs feed into the risk register and then you get hold of the output of the risk register, you know, something like that, perhaps. What was the other area? I always do this, but I forget what the second point. Can I come back if I remember the second point?
Yes, Councillor. Councillor Shelley, I think, has got a question first. He'll let you collect your thoughts. Councillor Shelley.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes, you've even got a printed version. It should be easy for you. I pretend to know absolutely nothing about audit. I do like the table at the end there, the Internal Audit Plan 26-27, because it's really clear. And I'm drawn to a couple of questions which you might be able to answer really, really simply. One is one's sort of semi-technical one, I suppose, around the taxi licensing part of it, where it says it implies it's brought forward from 26-27, but in the column there it's got 10 green days, which are in the 25-26. I don't understand how that relates to 25-26. So that's my first question.
Yes, thank you. So taxi licensing was sort of on a reserve list for 25-26, and it just worked out that we managed to arrange that audit, and it's nearly been completed now. It wasn't in the original. It was as a reserve list for if we were perhaps getting difficulties, or it was easier to put other areas into 26-7. So it is being done in the 25-26 financial year. The audit's not quite finished. It will be reported at the next time.
Thank you. My other question is about the length of time that all this seems to take. So this is a plan for 2 financial years.
The plan I'm asking for approval for is just the 26-27 plan. The 27-28 days are sort of potentially what we'll look at, but we would revisit that at this time next year to make sure that those areas were still appropriate and the sort of highest risk areas for the council in the way we look what we look at.
Okay, so I don't doubt the importance of it all. It's just as a striking jump from the table is just so clear. I'm afraid a striking jump from the 278 actual days in 25-26 to 377, which is more than a year of actual operational days.
And the reason there were less days in 25-26 was because we had a member of staff on maternity leave, so we had a gap. So that's why we've got more days, operational days in 26-27, and I'm working on the basis we'll still have a full team in 27-28. If that changes and we lose a member of staff for some reason, we may have to adjust the plan accordingly.
It's a huge undertaking, isn't it? I mean, this is presumably comparable with other councils.
It is, yes. I mean, you've got a good audit team, you've got a very experienced senior auditor, and yes, but it is a challenge, but we're hopeful we'll achieve the bulk of the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And just to remind members as well that we do get updates regularly at GNR anyway as it goes throughout the year. So if there are issues come up, then we'll get those come up. Councillor Hughes, have you remembered your point?
I have, thank you.
Excellent.
Do you look at processes and the tools that officers have to deal with particular particular functions?
Yes, we look at processes and procedures and documentation. If they've used particular systems, what information's coming in, is it accurate? Is that what you meant?
Yes, it is. I was wondering whether there are changes to IT happening at the moment, quite significant changes to IT. I wondered whether you would be looking at the impact of such, or the opportunities for the changes in IT in running council's services and making and operations. I don't know. It seems to me that in some areas, for example, doing consultations, there are big opportunities for consolidating the results of consultations using artificial intelligence techniques, for example. And that might have an impact on all those areas where we do consultations, including planning and developing the local plan.
We have got some days in for IT, and that would be part looking at cyber and network security, and as part of that we were intending to pick up on AI and policy and use of and training and, you know, appropriate. Normally when new systems are coming in, we would like to be involved and sort of consulted to have some level of input in terms of the controls that would hopefully be in place.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors? Do I have any supporters? Councillor Flitter? Did you want to speak on it?
Yeah. Financial advice. So I'm quite happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Flitter is the seconder. Do you want to speak on it as well?
No, I don't. No.
Thank you. And this is on both recommendations. Could I have all those four, please? Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Jenny. Cheers for that. On to number 10, other Jenny. External Auditors Annual Report and Audit Completion. Follow-up letter from the financial statements of 24-25. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So it's a very brief update from External Audit this evening because of where we're at in our annual cycle. So you will remember that at the last month's edition of this committee, we brought our audit completion report, which gave our conclusions on the main financial statements audit. And in the meeting before that, in November, we brought our auditor's annual report. So in your agenda pack this evening, you have the final version of the report we brought to the November committee. So that's the auditor's annual report, which contains our value for money conclusions. You will note that this report is essentially exactly the same as the one that was first presented to you. The only difference is that we said that we would anticipate issuing a audit opinion on such and such date, and now we confirm that we did. We issued our audit opinion as we anticipated with an unqualified opinion on the 30th of January. So that is to confirm, so firstly to confirm that that happened and the audit is now signed off, which is well ahead of the deadline, which is in fact tomorrow, so a month ahead. It's also good news because next year the deadline will come in by 1 month. So that means that we also meet the deadline as it will be next year. So that's already quite positive. Essentially, the only piece of truly new information is on page 109 of your packs, which is our audit completion follow-up letter. So in here, that has the confirmation of those areas that were marked as outstanding, or ongoing rather, under review, in our audit completion report that we brought to you in January. And there is also one additional unadjusted misstatement in the appendix on page 109. And that is 356,000 to do with property, plant and equipment valuations. That is to do with the area of, in fact, one asset and a disagreement that we had with the way the valuer had arrived at that area. But as you see, that is not material to the financial statements as a whole, does not affect the opinion, but it is above our reporting threshold, so it is brought to you in this report. We also have a confirmation of our fees. The fees have gone to PSAA because any fee, the scale fee, as you know, is set by PSAA, and any fee variations we must first get approved by Section 151 officer, and then they have to go to PSAA for final approval. So those have currently been submitted to PSAA. They're with them for approval, but Karen has indicated that she is in agreement with the reasons behind those fee variations. So as I said, quite a brief update from us, but I'd welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for your work as well. Do I have any questions from the floor at all? In which case, do I have any? Thank you very much, Councillor Flitter. Move. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Hughes. Could I have all those voting for then, please? Both recommendations. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jenny. Move on to item number 11, the persistent and unreasonable complaints policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has been brought before members because the previous version was adopted in 2009. So it required updating to ensure it still met the needs of the council and its officers. It previously only dealt with complaints that were received via our complaints procedure. Now it includes all complaints received by the council. It also includes the addition of a warning letter before restrictions to highlight any unacceptable behaviour, and it's clarified the right of review, so complainants' rights to appeal are clear, and how this will be undertaken and how they can request that review. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from the floor at all? Councillor Ripton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, this was really helpful. Does it apply only to complaints in the sense of a formal complaint has been made and then there's a persistent follow-up, or would it also apply to any member of the public who maybe hadn't complained but persistently went after a particular topic, even having received a final reply?
Yeah, so through you, Chair. The previous version did only deal with the complaints that came through the complaints procedure, which is why it's been amended. It now covers things like antisocial behaviour in that section and environmental health that receive complaints in other ways. So it does cover all complaints that receive to the council, not just through that procedure.
And would that include non-complaints, but I guess persistent requests for information that we deem had been met? Yeah.
Yeah, just for clarification, yes, it would. So if there was a repeat request for something, that would be considered as a potential vexatious or repeat request, so it would be covered under this policy.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor at all? Councillor Buttle.
Thanks very much. Did this policy used to have the word vexatious in it? I seem to remember that there were vexatious complaints before, and that's no longer here. We're now on persistent and unreasonable. Is there actually a difference?
Chair, our previous version, this is sort of the bare bones of this comes from our previous version. That I don't recall there being the word vexatious within it, but looking at other councils across the district, this is sort of in line with the same wording that they would use.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have anyone to move this one, please, if I could? Thank you, Councillor Ripton. Do I have a second at all? Thank you, Councillor Buttle. Can I have all those for exception of the report, please? Policy, sorry. Thank you very much. Is that confirmed, sorry? Yeah, sorry, thank you. And can I go on to item number 12 then, please? A consultation engagement report of the Scrutiny Committee, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report represents the findings of the Scrutiny Committee's Task and Finish Group, which reviewed the Council carries out consultation and engagement. The Scrutiny recommended 3 key changes to amend the Council's consultation and engagement strategy, which are shown within the recommendations. Following this, officers have considered the Scrutiny Committee's recommendations in detail, and along with the practical implications of implementing them, and the overall view is that they are achievable within existing resources. I'd just like to draw your attention to the paragraphs 2.4, 2.5 and 2.6. The early involvement of the corporate policy officer and communications team can be embedded more clearly in the strategy. The light touch evaluations can be delivered, but I want to stress about key consultations which within current capacity, and improvements to the consultation register, such as publishing outcomes of you said we did feedback, can be incorporated into the existing processes. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Caroline. Any questions? If there's no questions, can I ask anyone? Oh, thank you, Councillor Felicity. Councillor Hughes. Oh, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Go on, Councillor Hughes. Do either of you wish to speak on it at all? No. Thank you very much. Could I have all those for this? Thank you very much, everyone. And on to item number 13, the Annual Equality Information, January 26th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. So the report before you is basically for the committee to note the equality data that we published in January. So the Council's got a public sector equality duty to publish its data every year, and that needs to be done by the 31st of January. Just to confirm that ours was published in time on the 28th of January in accordance with that guidance. So this isn't a report that normally comes to the committee, but I think you'll see there's quite a considerable amount of data in there. There's actually some really good information. It's a very collaborative approach across the whole of the council to coordinate the information that's in there. So it's before you today just for noting that information is on our website. If there's any questions, happy to take those.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Are there any questions for anyone? Do I have any movers then, please? Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Do I have the seconder? Thank you, Councillor G. Can I have all those for the noting of this paper? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Just to, as well, take a note, back on item 6, I've taken in action to basically follow up with the third item with Wirksworth, to basically with the leaders from each group, and I'll make sure that all members are copied into that discussion, basically, that have been here present. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good night.